Om Shri Sai Ram. My most humble and reverential pranams at Bhagwan's divine lotus feet. Good morning, everyone. Now I have the pleasant duty to introduce our next speaker for the day, Dr. Shashwati Sen. Dr. Shashwati Sen completed her MSc from Devi Ahilya Vishwavidyalaya, Indore, and joined the Technical Physics Division of Bhabha Atomic Research Center in the year 1997 through 40th batch of BARC Training School. In the initial years of her career, she worked on high-temperature superconductors and completed her PhD on the same topic from Mumbai University. Later, she started working on various nanomaterials like tellurium, tin oxide, tungsten oxide, with application as gas sensors. Currently, Madam is heading the Crystal Technology section of Technical Physics Division BARC and is working on growth of single crystals and transparent ceramics for application in radiation detection. Further, Madam is collaborating with the Department of Physics at our institutes for 3 years on the Gamma Camera project. Dr. Shashwati Sen has received many awards, which include the DAE Science and Technology Excellence Award in 2017, the DAE Solid State Physics Symposium Young Achievers Award in 2008. She has also received the DAE Group Achievement Award in 2008 for the work on gas sensors and in 2014 for the work on growth of single crystals of cesium iodide and sodium iodide for radiation detection. In addition, Dr. Sen has over 200 publications in various international peer-reviewed journals and more than 3,500 citations to her credit. Dr. Sen will be addressing us today on the topic Scintillators in Healthcare. I now welcome you, Madam, to deliver your talk.
Good morning, everyone. Hope you are able to listen me. Thank you for introduction.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for the introduction. And, let me first thank the organizer for giving me this opportunity to be part of this meeting on healthcare. And many thanks to Professor Shiv Shankara Sai for collaborating with me and making me a part of the family for SSIL, for the Satya Sai Institute of Higher Learning. And okay, so my presentation, is the presentation visible?
Yes, it's visible.
It's visible. No, okay. So I am a material scientist, so not exactly imaging kind of work, but I'm working on materials which are used for medical imaging. So these are the scintillator materials which are used for healthcare. So so I will start my presentation with what are scintillation. So scintillation is the process in which a high energy photon like a gamma ray or X-ray can be visualized. So when a gamma ray or a X-ray falls on a scintillator material, which is generally a single crystal, it causes ionization inside the material, and this ionization leads the conversion of the high energy gamma ray or the X-ray to a low energy photon, which is a visible light photon. And this light photon can in the next process can be we can detect it using a photodiode. So which can be a photodetector, it can be a photodiode, or it can be a PM cube or any other like a CCD camera, and which gives rise to the electronic pulse. So this is the scintillation process. So why it is required, like my previous speaker was saying, like we require things where what I cannot see, we have to see those things. And more so when like radiations, high energy radiations, gamma rays or X-rays are there. So they need to be detected because for both the reasons, because they are harmful and also because they are useful also. The humankind and the science has come to the phase where we have put this harmful or high energy radiation to useful applications like medical imaging. So for imaging purpose, you have to detect, and to detect you have to make them into a electronic pulse or an electrical pulse, because all our machines or instruments are based on electronics or a electrical pulse or a electron, basically a pulse of electron. So this photon, how to convert this high energy photon to a electronic pulse is by converting the high energy gamma, high energy or high frequency electromagnetic wave to a low energy electromagnetic wave, which can be then converted. So the ionization radiations which I will be talking here is mainly gamma and X-ray, but gamma and X-ray, because they are what we are using in healthcare. But these scintillators can be used to detect synchrotron radiation also, alpha, beta, electron, proton, and neutrons. So scintillators are basically all those. So here it is the electromagnetic spectrum, and these are the regime where I will be talking about. So we have got hard X-rays and gamma rays. And medical imaging techniques which are using these high energy radiations are radiography, computed tomography, that is the CT scanning, and then nuclear imaging processes like PET, which is the positron emission tomography, and SPECT. SPECT is the single photon emission computerized tomography. So these are two different categories. Radiography is the normal X-ray plate, which we are doing from childhood. We know when there is a fracture or something, we go to the doctor takes an X-ray, and that is the radiography. And computed tomography, CT, nowadays, and because of COVID also, we keep on hearing that doctor has done a CT scan. So what is CT scan? CT scan is also a radiography, but it is like you are taking the radiography or the X-ray scan of the body or any organ of the body at different angles. And then these many radiographs are then using computer and imaging techniques. They are put together to make a 3D. So basically these two techniques are anatomical images. But nowadays, because of nuclear imaging processes and radiopharmaceuticals which are used, we can do functional imaging also, like how the blood is flowing or how there is a tumor in the body, you can find out, or like heart pumping and all those things. So in this case, nuclear image, a radionuclide, radioisotope is injected in the body, and then they are detected. So in PET, for positron emission tomography, a positron emitting nuclide, generally sodium 11, is injected into the body, and it is a positron emitter, and this positron then gets reacts or interacts with an electron in the body, and then it gives rise to two photons which are emitted at 180 degree in different directions, and then these photons, which are of 511 keV energy, they are detected. So that is the, and by this you can find out the very exact location of tumors generally. And SPECT is the single photon emission computerized tomography. It also uses a gamma emitting, but here it was only a positron emitting, but here we have a gamma emitting radionuclide, which takes a two-dimensional picture. And then this is gathered on a scintillating camera, and then planar images, many, and then there is a reconstruction of a 3D image. So that is a SPECT. So here we can do functional imaging. And so what are the energies? Because when I am talking about a scintillator material or imaging this using materials, we have to know at what energies this the gamma or the X-ray is coming. So for a general X-ray imaging of a radiography, chest radiography or X-ray CT scan, it is 150 kilovolts. But when we are going to nuclear medicines, like in PET, I said it is 511 keV. because that is the energy of a gamma which is ejected in both the direction when an electron and a positron combine with each other. And in case of a SPECT or a scintigraphy, it is in this region, so 60 to 511. So what are the what should be the characteristic of the material of the scintillator which can be used for this? So first thing is like high light output, means the X-ray conversion efficiency, means whenever a gamma photon or a X-ray photon is coming and interacting with the scintillator, it should give out a burst of photons at the lower energy. So there should be high light output, then only, because when you are application, like in case of a medical application, we have to also think of the dose which our of this techniques are giving to the human body. So the material, if to lower the doses, the material should be that it should whatever, if one gamma is coming out, like just a one gamma photon, if it can detect from the human body and give out an image, that will the best, because it will be giving a very low dose. So that is one thing. Next is the high X-ray stopping power. Stopping power is means when a high energy gamma is coming and interacting with the scintillator material, the scintillator material should be able to stop it. The stopping is required to produce a proper image, because if it passes through it, if the material is transparent, then it is not losing its energy in the scintillator material, then obviously you will not be able to get the maximum output. So you need a high X-ray stopping power. Then good spectral match with the photodetector. So whatever you are using a PM tube, or you are using a photodiode or a CCD. So the output, the emission wavelength of the scintillator material should be matching with the photodetector. Then there should be decay time should be very short, because like in maybe not so much important in case of a radiography, but when you are doing a medical nuclear imaging kind of technique, where you are doing imaging of some functional organ of the body, you should be able to detect the next step. So the first step which has given out some images, or the photon burst which is have been created from the first step of your organ in the scintillator material, it should die out so that the next step can be. Otherwise, we will be seeing the ghost images. So basically, this short primary decay will lead to low afterglow, because that ghost images is gone. And then radiation damage resistant, because it should be like long, it should be stable, it should be hard, and it should not go bad very easily. Then with time and temperature, because you are working, can go to very remote places also, compact and easy packaging and all those things are there. So what are the materials which are used for this? So this I will not go into big jargons and all those things, but like in my earlier slide I was saying about, so how those key points are coming into material characteristic. So when I am saying stopping power, good stopping power, so it should be having high density. So here you can see whatever scintillator materials we are using has to be used in this, like this is gadolinium oxysulfide, cesium iodide, thallium, which I will be talking. Then cadmium tungstate, zinc tungstate, calcium tungstate, BGO, which is one of the machines used in PETs. Then lutetium aluminium oxide, lutetium with different dopants, LUAP, lutetium silicate, and then sodium iodide. So you can see, except sodium iodide, these are all very high density materials. So whenever a gamma photon of say 511 keV is coming, so even a millimeter or a centimeter thickness of this material will be able to stop it. Then very high light yield I was saying. So this is the photons per MeV. So like 1 MeV of incoming radiation will lead to a photon burst of 40,000 photons at a lower wavelength. So this 40,000 of our cesium iodide, it is like 61,000. So when I am talking about 500 keV of energy of an incoming photon, so half of this, so like 30,000 photons I am getting whenever one photon from a positron emission tomography is coming. So this kind of materials are very useful. Then here it is the decay time which I am talking about. So you can see for a cesium iodide it is 900 nanoseconds. So that is around in microseconds. But this is fine when we are doing radiography. But when we are going into nuclear SPECT and PET kind of thing, we have to go to very fast, because we are imaging the functionalities of the human body. So 40 nanosecond, 30 nanosecond, or even faster materials are used. And here it is the emission wavelength. So you can see this is around 500 nanometer, which is the green light of and most of the PM tubes or the silicon photodiodes has got very good matching with these wavelengths. And this is 1/T. So I will not go into. So we can see from the earlier chart also that no material can have all the desirable properties. So we are working on more than one material. So here I am just giving a very no, a fancy photograph, you can say, of the different scintillator materials, except germanium obviously, which are used. We have, our group has been working in BRC. So these are all single crystals. Single crystals are mainly required in scintillators in applications, because one thing is that single crystals are transparent to their own luminescence. Means whatever luminescence is forming, whatever photons are getting are generating inside, they are luminescent. It will be, they are transparent, so they will come out and you can use any photo detector to detect them. And this is gadolinium gallium garnet, one of the new materials which are coming up for in use in a SPECT or PET kind of machine. And this is YAP, yttrium aluminium perovskite. This is sodium iodide thallium, which is one of the oldest material, scintillator material available. And this material is used in different forms in radiography. So whatever radiography plate we are using a thin film of sodium iodide thallium base. So that I will be coming to later on. And this is the lutetium silicate, which is used in SPECT machines nowadays. So these are there. So how does X-ray radiography looks like? So basically, when you are going to the chest X-ray, say, so this X-ray, medical X-rays are there. So it is coming, and you have got a camera here, which is recording the. I'm talking about the digital. Earlier, there used to be this sodium iodide, sorry, this silver iodide screen used to be there, and which has to be developed, and you see. But nowadays, when you are going into digital radiography, so there is this scintillator screen is there, then this is the sensor, photo sensor, and then there is a camera. So the scintillator will see, so whatever X-ray which has passed through the body, so depending on that you will get the contrast in the image, and that will be detected here. So in to decrease the cost of these things, because in India these whatever scintillator screens and these machines are not yet being made. So our group has started working on indigenous development. So there have been, we have used two techniques to make the cesium iodide thallium crystal. So one is a mosaic of this crystal, and other is a thin film. So I will be talking about that. So we are putting this mosaic. So this is around 200 mm, means 20 centimeter by 25 centimeter. Long plate is there. And then we have put a normal CCD camera, which is our DSLR camera. So how we can use that? So first is like one is like cesium iodide thin films, which we are working on. So thin films, any material scientist or PhD student will be know, like whoever is working on thin films is this is a thermal evaporation system. Very easy to use and very economical, and most of the lab has this. So we are putting our cesium iodide on this resistively heated filament, and putting our substrate, which is generally quartz plates, on this, and evaporating the cesium iodide, and we get this kind of films. So this is the microstructure of the cesium iodide film. The cesium iodide has got this very good property that whenever a film is growing, sorry, it is a micro columnar kind of structure, means this is needle shaped structures are there. And as you see, this diameter of one needle is say 10 micron micrometer to 20 micrometer, and not more than that, and very regular. So this basically this needle shaped structure is a single crystal in itself. So whenever a photon is coming, a high energy photon, a gamma photon, or X-ray, like we are doing X-ray, so it is coming and impinging here, is it being absorbed. So whatever the burst of photon it gives up, it is getting collimated. It stays within this one needle, and so there is and then it travels and get detected with the photo detector. So if it is a specially resolved photo detector we are keeping on top of this film, so whatever information photon which is coming and impinging on this part is coming from this. So there is a lateral one-to-one correspondence because of this needle like structure, so that this photon which is coming, burst which has been produced, it will not go to any other direction, it will be collimated in this. So this leads to a very good resolution, spatial resolutions, otherwise there will be crossed out. So this is one way. So these are the few I am showing for photographs of the cesium iodide, and this is 200 micron thick cesium iodide film on silica quartz substrates which I've done. And after deposition we have to do the luminescence studies, and this is the line pair resolution. Line pair resolution is like, which is the minimum resolution lines are there which it can differentiate. So we have been able to achieve around 50 micron line pair resolution. So any defects, like if you even have a fracture in your body and any bone, which hairline fracture like 50 micron or something, hairline fracture, your hair diameter is 100 micron. So those kind of fractures we can detect using our films. So this is again, and here just for testing, this is the printed circuit board of a multimeter, which you can see, and this is, so image is different. So resolution is 5 line pair per micron. Here is the, so this kind of structure we are making. So this is one material, and our group is working on this. And next is like mosaic structure. So when you have to do very big screens, and mainly this is not much for healthcare, but when industrial application is there to image, like NDT imaging is required to find out if some corrosion is there in a very big pipeline, or some turbine, there is a crack in the turbine. So here it is not very easy to deposit very large and very uniform thin films. So here what we have done, we have cut the crystals, which I will be coming later on, and then we have make a mosaic. So this is like 3 by 3 mosaic of say cesium iodide crystal, and normal, then it has been mounted, and normal DSLR camera we have used. So this is the remote of AC remote is there, so you can see all the printed circuits inside, how it is there, and this is the line pair resolution. And this is multimeter normal, so PCB tracks are there, and this is a human palm phantom which I've taken. So we can see a lot of detailing, so can be used. So that X-ray is shine, then you are putting the object, and this is the photograph. Now I'm coming to the CT scanner. So how does a CT scanner is different from X-ray? Basically, CT scanner is like your patient is there, and you have this X-ray source, and this X-ray source is rotating around the patient, and you have full 360 degree of detectors. So this is a ring of detectors, and these are segmented detectors, so which is all around it. And whatever images are there now, this you are getting a 360 degree image of the patient, and then it is these images are all stitched together by computational method, and you get a tomographic. So here, as you see that these are segmented detectors are there. So these are also cesium iodide which even commercial CT scanners are using is cesium added. So here how we have our work has started working on this. So this is a normal cesium added crystal which we are growing in our lab. So cesium added single crystal is grown by a method called the Bridgman single crystal growth technique. So here we melt the cesium added material, polycrystalline material, and then very slowly cool it. And this is a 50 mm diameter and 100 mm around 50 mm length crystal is there. So from this crystal we have to now take out a part. So these is a square part which we have taken out. So, and this you can see, this is the glowing. So this is how the scintillator process is. And under normal light, this is how cesium added crystal looks like. But when we are putting it under UV in this case or an X-ray, it gives out radiation photon at 550 nanometer, which is this yellowish kind of thing. So we are making this crystal plates. And for that plate we have used for the earlier, I have shown that mosaics crystal. But when we are making a segmented detector, so we have to either have a 2D matrix or a 1D matrix. So the crystal which we have grown, this is a cesium added. First it has to be cut, so we make it into cylinders, and then we slice it in one direction, then we rotate it and slice it in another direction. Also, to prevent any crosstalk from one pixel to the another pixel, we have to put reflectors, and then for full packaging. So in this way we have done. So like the single crystal was segmented, then optical cement by making a TiO2 resin and hardeners were made, and then pasted on all slides slices of cesium added crystal. Then in this way we have made a 1/8 pixel size of cesium added, and then 8/8 pixel. So you can see. So this was the crystal. Initially you have seen how the crystal looked like. Then it was cut into a cylindrical pieces, and now you can see this is a one-dimensional matrix and this is a 2D matrix. Means hereby 8 cesium added pixels, 8/8 are there. So this is a 2D matrix is there, and this is 1D. So there are in this photograph you can see there are 16 pixels which are there. So these are used when we have to do the imaging. So this 16 pixels I have shown. So these are the 16, and this is the radiography image of this, like to show that how uniformly they are stacked together. So each pixel of the cesium added is the width is 1.4 mm, the thickness is 3.2. So sorry, this length is 3.2 mm, this is 1.4, and this separation between these two is 100 micron. And this separation is very important because that is how it has to be matched with the your photodiode. And this is required because if you want to do any medical imaging, you have to have very good spatial resolution, then only you can detect. And I think that is very important for doctors to know exactly where any ailment is located in the human body. And this is the photograph of the photodiode on which these are mounted. So they are mounted on this using some optical glues and all. And this is how they look after, and then we have to do the full packaging. So this is for 1D array. But there are, I have shown the 2D array also, 8/8 matrix. And this 8/8 matrix of cesium iodide on position sensitive PM tubes we have mounted. So this work we have done on our lab also, and we are also doing this work with the Satya Sai Institute of Higher Learning in collaboration with them for use of a gamma camera, which can be used as for detection of lymphatic nodes in patients. So basically this will be a very small, this position sensitive PM tube. It has got 64, means 8 by 8 matrix of photomultiplier tubes, which are inside this. This is a commercial product, but this size is like just 5 centimeter by 5 centimeter. And we have mounted our cesium iodide pixel on this and made this kind of small device. So you can see this is our laptop and this is the device, whole device, and it has got some all readout electronics, including the readout electronics. This is such a small device. This device, you can see, this is the scintillator is mounted here, then this is this device, and on the back there is the readout electronics, and directly it is connected by USB to the laptop. So this small instrument is very useful when we want to detect any, it can be used as a handheld gamma camera, which is the work which we are doing with the Satya Sai Institute of Higher Learning. And at our lab, we have tested this device. So this is like there is 1, 2, and 3 radiation sources. So we can see the radiation sources using this. And now we can also move it because it is a very small and can be packaged properly. So these 3 sources we have detected. So if like any radio medicine, radionuclide, radioactive medicine is injected to a patient, like for iodine is injected for thyroid glands. So if it goes and gets absorbed on the thyroid glands, basically these whatever is injected, they have like glucose based medicines are there. So whenever there is any tumor coming up in any organ, basically thyroids and all, so these tumors has got the they have got this, they try to absorb glucose more and more. So these radioactive medicines also go and start setting, and we can very well find out their position. So if you see this within a 5 centimeter by 5 centimeter, we can find out very precisely using this device with the position sensitive PM tube and our matrix of cesium iodide, how it can be used in medicine. So this was a lab source which we have done, and now with actual human phantom we will be doing at this institute, Satya Institute. And now for a PET scanner. So as I told you, this positron emitting radionuclide is injected. So it emits the positron, and then it interacts with an electron, and it gives out 2 gamma photons of 511 keV each. So like if it is coming here, it is, and so we can exactly find out the position of this tumor, and it can also see the functioning of this in this case. So this is the PET machine. That is how it works, like in the head, in the brain, or in the chest or something. So the scintillator material in this case is not, we cannot use cesium iodide in this case. One thing is that cesium iodide has got afterglow. So because for PET, we have to do detection of 2 gamma photons we have to do. Because when we are detecting 2 gamma photons simultaneously, the precise location and working can be found out. So cesium iodide is a slow scintillator material, so it cannot be used. So we have to find a better high fast scintillator material. So main requirement for a PET machine is mainly is timing resolution, and then other is like high light output, fast decay is the timing resolution, high density, high atomic number, all those are remains the same. Good energy resolution because you have to detect this 511 keV among other things, and non-hygroscopic and other things. And then advance of this PET is time of flight PET is there, and other things. And in case of SPECT, we are doing we had some radioisotope, gamma emitting radioisotope is there. So it should have lighted, good lighted, and resolution. Time, spatial resolution as well as temporal resolution. So spatial resolution is done by using collimators, where the PM tubes, like PM tubes are there. So we have to put collimators before that to maintain the spatial resolution and temporal resolution, because it has to be very fast. So some of the materials which are used for this PET and SPECT is like lutetium silicate and gadolinium gallium garnet and lutetium aluminium garnet. These are things. So lutetium silicate and gadolinium gallium garnet our group is working on. So I will be showing some results on that. So lutetium silicate is a material which melting point is 100 degrees centigrade. So to make this for the SPECT and PET, you have to use single crystals. You cannot use thin films for that, because these are high energy gamma rays, gamma photons which are coming. So you need a single crystal to absorb them. Also, you need the energy resolution. So when energy resolution is required to be detected, so we have to use a single crystal in that case. So the growth temperature is 2100 degrees centigrade. So it is very difficult to grow this material. So, and the second material which I was talking about is gadolinium gallium garnet. So its a melting point is 1850 degree. So these materials are grown in a Zagorski technique, which I will come in later. So this is a Zagorski crystal growth technique. Here the material is kept in a crucible and then it is melted. The melting is at a very high temperature, as I said. And this crucible, normal any material cannot be used. So you have to use very high melting point metals. So metals and which are not interacting, which are not reacting with the melt. So this is either iridium crucible or sometimes people are using molybdenum or tungsten, like that. And then the crucible, the crystal seed is come and it touches the melt, and very precisely using rotation and translation, this is pulled upwards. So this is called the seed rod. The seed of the seed crystal comes and touches the melt, and then it is pulled upward, so that there is a first the nucleation site is there at the seed, and then very slowly the crystal keeps on growing. So this is how this crystal, you see here the photograph. So here we have grown. So this is the gadolinium gallium garnet crystal is there. So, and this is around 30 centimeter diameter, 30 mm diameter, 3 centimeter diameter, and around 5 centimeter in length. So this one crystal growth takes place in say 1 week. So crystal growth is a very slow process, and you require a lot of patience. So this is how we have grown. So these are now we have started working on their applications in healthcare. We have already tested these materials for their use in radiation detection in our Department of Atomic Energy. Various users are using them for safety purpose or detection of gamma rays. And now we have taken up this challenge of using them for indigenous development of PET machines. Now, when I'm talking about healthcare and radiation detection and healthcare, so radiation, these in the earlier materials which I was talking about, we are detecting the radiation in situ, means live detection of radiation is there. But there are materials which are called radiation dosimeters. So these materials are required to store, they store the information about radiation exposure, and then this information can be retrieved either in situ or ex situ. So why we require these kind of materials? Because one is the radiation worker, like in case of reactors also, but in medical healthcare, a person who is operating the radiography machine is exposed to a radiation, X-ray radiation, or even a patient who undergoes a kind of treatment, so they are exposed to radiation. So how much radiation one is getting exposed to, we have to account for those, and whether it is permissible or not. So in general, as per international norms, per year, a human body can have a dose of 20 millisievert. So natural background is there. So here you can see when you are undergoing one CT for abdominal region, you are exposed to effective radiation doses 10 millisievert, which is comparable to natural background radiation of 3 years. So 3 years you get, so this much radiation you are getting. But and then when you are doing normal bone X-ray, that is 1.5 millisievert, and this is 6 months, so 2 millisievert when head CT is there. So these are the differently comparable, and international standards say human body can be exposed to 20 millisievert per year. So that is a permissible limit. So we should be aware of this, and a technician or a doctor who is working with these medicines, so we should find out, it is required to find out how much they are getting exposed to. So these dosimeter materials are required. So we have been working for this. So this is the how this is the radiation. So one is air exposure, which is the amount of ionization which is caused in the air by the gamma ray. So that is called the. But when a material absorbs these doses, so it is recorded in gray. This is the gray amount of radiation energy absorbed in material. But when it absorbed in equivalent dose, it is resulting this absorbed dose, equivalent dose in human body. So it is measured in sieverts. So this material is one of the very good dosimetric material which our group has worked on. This is the lithium tetraborate. Lithium borate crystals are there. This is also grown by the Czochralski technique, but its melting point is quite less. It is around 900 degrees centigrade. So not very difficult to grow, but there are difficulties in this growth because this grows at a very small speed, and we have to do a lot of material engineering to get good dosimetric output. So these are the photographs of the lithium tetraborate crystal which I've done. So this crystal has got is that it can detect very low doses, and then it can be used for both neutron and gamma exposure. So gamma exposure is the main for in the healthcare, but for in our kind of work where we are working in reactors also, so neutron is also required. I'm sorry for this. And then can be used for both personal and medical dosimetry. So personal is like I was talking about healthcare workers who require, but medical dosimetry is like when you are giving some doses to a patient for cancer therapy or something. So you have to find out exactly how much dose we are giving. So when you are exposing a tumor to a cobalt-60 radiation, so like 1 gray is generally given at a time. So whether precisely measurement of this 1 gray dose has to be there, and how much the surrounding tissue is getting exposed, these are the some things which is required to know in radiation therapy. And how this dosimeters work is that they absorb the radiation, and when this radiation is falling on them, they create some kind of trap centers are there. So this the electrons which are created by this radiation gets trapped in the trap centers, and when either we are then stimulating this material by thermal heating or by optical stimulation. So this is when we are using thermal heating to read out the dose information. It is called thermally stimulated luminescence or optically stimulated luminescence. So these are the two techniques on this these dosimeters are working on. This is TOSL, thermal stimulation, that is thermoluminescence, and optically stimulated luminescence. So thermoluminescence, but small chips of these crystals, very small chips are used for dosimeter. So we are putting it on a temperature control heater, And we have a photomultiplier tube which will be recording the luminescence which is coming from it. And this heating and is spotted, and we get this kind of a curve. So this is like the glow curve, we call it the glow curve, TL glow curve. And this we have measuring the intensity, and this is the temperature. And this area under the curve gives the amount of dose which has this chip has seen, this crystal chip has seen. So like I'm writing at 3 microgray. So this was the minimum dose we were able to measure using this this crystal lithium tetraborate. And this is the linearity of this. So you can see in microgray to 1 gray, even more than that, it has got linear behavior. And this material we have used for medical dosimetry. And for medical dosimetry, when we are using it for it has been used in human phantoms. So we require very high reproducibility, so that the variation from one chip to another, one crystal piece to the another crystal piece, should be less than 2%. This lithium tetraborate crystals we have used, we have done some not exactly clinical trials, but field trials for medical dosimetry application. So for medical dosimetry, this is I was saying, for cancer therapy. So when cobalt-60 radiation is given to at different tissues in the body, so exactly how much this radiation is given, we have to measure them. So this, you can see human phantom is there. So this crystals are put at different places, and then it is measured. So we have taken high quality 120 samples we have taken, with the variation is less than 2% variation is there. And these were used for verification of dose during radiation therapy at Linac-based Radiation Therapy Center at ACTREC. This is a DAE center at Navi Mumbai, Kharghar. So here you can see centigrade, 214 centigrade, and these are the different doses which was given. And this is our measured by our crystals. So you can see very good matching is there. So now the phantom trials are already over, and we are looking forward for the actual clinical trials where they can be used in patients. So we have done this kind of work also, and going on. And optically stimulated luminescence I was talking, where we are stimulating this radiation dosimeter by like a green LED or a blue LED. And then this kind of decay curve, because they are getting de-excited from their trap centers, so we get this kind of decay curve. And this area under the curve, if we plot, that is the actual dose. So this optically stimulated luminescence, because we are reading the dose, we are retrieving the information about the dose by just using a LED. It can be used for in situ detection of radiation when you are giving it directly to a patient. So like, because the crystals are very hard material, and this is lithium and boron is there, so it can be used in a catheter and directly put inside the patient at the exact site of the tumor, wherever the tumor is there. And then when the radiation is given, so the light output from this, it can be this luminescence signal can be taken out using a fiber optics, and we can directly read. So this is one potential application of this crystal for radiation therapy, like in situ detection of actual measurement of the radiation doses. So these are various work which our group has been doing on the healthcare area of with radiations. And this is our team at Crystal Technology Lab of BARC. And thank you. So please let me know if you have been able to understand the work, or if you have got any questions. Please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Any questions from the audience?
Yes. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for such a wonderful, insightful talk. Students definitely benefited from this, very educative talk.
Thank
We're
you.
also happy to know that BARC is doing such a wonderful work of developing sensor crystals for varied applications. Very happy to know that, and also happy to collaborate with such a premier institution and such good work you're all doing. My question is,
So the pleasure is totally mine to collaborate with your department.
yeah, it's mutual. Thank you, ma'am. My question is, now, since this technology is now well developed by the BARC, any Indian industries have come and then taken this for translation into devices? Well, we hear only Saint Gobain and such big, MNCs to be making these.
No, sir. I think actually, sir, we have given the crystal growth technology for cesium iodide to two person. One is ECIL Hyderabad, very near to you. So though ECIL is a part of DAE, but it is a commercial organization. So we are R&D people. So we cannot cater to the requirements of the general public.
Correct.
But ECIL, we ourselves has gone to ECIL. We have set up the crystal growth labs, and cesium iodide, sir, they have started working on it, and now they are growing the crystals on their own.
One
so
is
very
ECIL.
soon. Yes, sir.
Okay.
And sir, other is a private company in Mumbai only. It is called And Ceramic. So they have also taken up the this technology for single crystal growth of cesium iodide as of now. And but they have still not started it properly, I would say. So we are still in the process of knowledge transfer. The technology we have given them, but for setting up, because initial know-how transfer and proper hand-holding. So that
Hand-holding, yes.
incubation period is going on. And we are open for any other also if they want to come up, because cesium iodide is one which is used everywhere material. It is easy to grow, easy to handle, and it has got very wide application, not just healthcare, which I have pointed out, like from X-ray baggage scanner, which is
Yes.
extensively used nowadays. So
Yes, in
from
airports and then all that.
everywhere, even malls and cinema theaters are using nowadays. So that is one application.
You're also
So-
doing for the PET also. So you said that deposit on emission tomography.
Yes, sir, yes,
That also has been transferred. Knowledge transfer has taken place.
No, sir, no, sir. For medical imaging, sir, there has been no knowledge transfer, because
Okay.
we are also in the R&D stage at present.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Welcome.
Ma'am, I have a question, ma'am.
A very slow speed we have to cut, and then when we are we have to also be very precise with the dimension, like I have showed you 1.4 mm, 3.2 mm, like this kind of thing. So there are machines which are available in Indian market. Also there are machines in Chennai based are their companies who can do this kind of very slow speed and very precise cutting. So crystal cutting machines are available, which for the cutting we have to do, and then we have to again put them back together in precise arrays. So that is a different know-how.
Okay. Okay, thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, another question we have, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, what gamma emitting radioisotopes are used for the SPECT camera? You mentioned the use of some gamma emitting radioisotopes.
Yeah, actually they are fluorides which are using some fluorine 17 isotope is there.
Okay.
So which is used.
Okay.
For this.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ma'am, one more
Madam,
question.
this question is from materials perspective.
Yes.
We have been seeing yttrium-based garnet to be the most popular material as a single crystal material. Your switch over from yttrium-based garnet to gadolinium gallium garnet, from materials perspective, how cost effective it is, because yttrium is more abundant, melting point is high, whether yttrium garnet. So do you have, or have you done any comparison based garnet versus gadolinium based garnet in your application?
Yes, sir. Actually, yttrium based garnet, the most famous yttrium based garnet is YAG. But YAG is not a scintillator material. YAG is a laser material. So a difference between a scintillator material and a laser material is laser has got this metastable state. That is why you can create this population inversion. Whereas in a scintillator, the decay has to be very fast. So whenever there is an exciting gamma coming on, it should decay fast. So YAG itself is not used, but another YAG based yttrium aluminum garnet is not used. Yttrium aluminum perovskite. There is one another allotrope of this material, you can say, which is used in scintillator material. And in one of my slides, I have shown, let me go back there. I have shown about this lutetium yttrium LUYAP is there. So basically, when we are using it for say SPECT kind of application, I said one important thing is that it has to be fast. So yttrium aluminum perovskite is a fast scintillator, but there are other scintillators like here I have. So these are lutetium based materials are there, or are more appropriate here. Or if I even go in earlier slides, I have shown where the various materials which are used. Are you able to see the slides?
Yeah, we are able to see the slide.
Okay.
Yeah, I saw in your table, in the first table that you had shown.
Yes.
Right in the
So,
beginning. Yeah.
yes. So we have done both kind of material. Yes, here. So you can see there most of the
Yes,
are
this table.
which we are using. So, and one more thing which I wanted to say here is that this YAG when you are using YAG, so yttrium aluminum, both are low Z materials. Here we want to have very high stopping power. So that's why high Z materials are more used. So because I said that density has to be large. So gadolinium, lutetium, these are high Z materials, and that's why they have got more application in medical imaging basically. But we are using yttrium aluminum perovskite in our normal radiation application because when we are talking about the stopping power, we can stop any given radiation, but we have to increase the interaction length. So I can put like a 50 mm long crystal to stop a 511 keV photon. But if I am putting that bigger crystal, but then for medical application, I cannot put because it has to be a compact system. You are putting a patient inside that, and then you have to house it inside, and then you have to have make a array. So that's why generally we are going into those material which has got very high density, and there yttrium is losing. So that's why in all this application we have used high Z materials.
Thank you.
One more question is, you talked about film based material detectors, thin film detectors. So
Yes.
how is it? Is there any specific advantage or disadvantage with respect to the crystalline detector?
Actually, thin film can be only used in radiography, where the energy is very less, because the film thickness is like 200 micron or maximum 1 millimeter. You cannot go beyond that. So whenever it is only used in radiography kind of, where your X-ray plate is there. So there we can use thin films. And the other is that because and this thin film is only used for cesium iodide. It is not used for any other scintillator material, because as I have told that cesium iodide has got this of growing into this needle-like structure. So I don't need to make these arrays. These pixels I did not make because it has got the natural arrays coming out because of this kind of needle-like structure. But when I'm going to any other high energy radiation detection, I cannot use these films. So that there is a trade-off, and because making films is easier, cheaper than growing a crystal and then cutting it and then making a pixel. So wherever it can be used, it is used, but it cannot be used everywhere. So it is like a trade-off.
Sarah madam,
Yes.
I have one basic question. Is this scintillating materials specific? Why?
Yeah.
What is their specificity that they are scintillators? Is there electronic structure or band gap? What makes these materials scintillators and why not others?
Yeah, actually, scintillator materials, you need a wide band gap, one thing, but you need a activator. Like cesium iodide per se, pure cesium iodide is not a very good scintillator. So I am adding thallium to it. So thallium is creating bands within its energy band gap, and this energy states are there within the band gap, and this energy state has got the property that it will be whenever electron hole pair is forming because of any high energy radiation, whenever there is a jump of electron from the valency band to conduction band, it comes to this energy state and it will decay fast. It will not trap, or the whatever this de-excitation is there, it will be a radiative de-excitation. It should not be a non-radiative de-excitation. Non-radiative de-excitation is like de-excitation through phonon mode. So then it will be just loss like heat. You will not get any luminous, any photon output. So two things is that when the de-excitation is there, it should give out a photon. So that is one thing a scintillator should have, and it should be fast. So whenever there is an incoming high energy photon is there, then it gets excited to the conduction band, and then from it gets lowered to the activator band and activator energy level, and it should come back to your ground state in a very small time. So this is a definition of a scintillator. So if you can find a transparent material matrix and use activators like that, so you can make a scintillator. So there is a lot of material engineering going on to make a very good scintillator, and for different application you use different scintillators, basically depending on their characteristic.
Okay. And one more question, ma'am.
Yes.
Is it crystallinity important for the scintillating materials? Why not glass amorphous materials?
Okay, amorphous material, as I told you, what is happening in a scintillator, you have to collect the photon which is coming out. Now, for that you need a transparent material. So ceramics are not generally transparent, but okay, then there are transparent ceramics which is coming out. But basically transparency is one thing which is important for a scintillator, because you have to collect the coming out, the emitted photon. So that's why you need transparency. So that's why you can use a glass also. But then the second point comes, which is not very important in medical dosimetry, but when I am doing a radiation detector kind of thing, I have to also find out the energy of the incoming photon, like the gamma photon it has come, whether it has come from a uranium or it has come from a plutonium or it has come from a cesium. All these gammas have got different energies. So to find the information of this energy, you require a crystal field, which can be only found out in a single crystal. You cannot do it with a glass-based scintillator. So there are glass-based scintillators, but it can be only used as a counter, not as a spectrometer, gamma spectrometer and all those things. So depending on application, I would say.
Okay, thank
you. Good afternoon, madam.
No?
You work only on scintillators, or CZT from the literature it is found to be having better features compared to these. So you have not worked on CZT?
No, myself, I have not worked on CZT. I'm working only on scintillator crystal. CZT is a semiconductor detector. So maybe in the future we will take up, but not at present. I know it is very good material, but growth of CZT itself is very challenging. So we have not taken up. Let us finish off our work with scintillator and then go to a new field.
Okay.
Yes.
And looks like in India there is nobody who's synthesizing CZT.
CZT, some work is going out at IGCAR Kalpakkam. So there is one crystal grower there, my very good colleague and collaborator, Dr. Ganesh Murthy. He is working on the growth of CZT.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
If there are any more questions?
Madam, one just last it's question
Sure.
on growth. In
Yes.
your beginning, you mentioned about thermal evaporation as one of the methods for growing single crystal, but on your graph, multi-single crystal feature that we see in that particular material, don't you think? I mean, is it advisable to have that, because then you will have a lot of artifacts, no?
No, the thermal evaporation graph which I was showing it is for the thin films of cesium iodide. But cesium iodide crystal itself, it is grown by the Bridgman technique, in
Okay.
which we have got proper single crystal. If you remember, I have shown one slide
Yes,
on
yes.
proper.
No, now I got it. That, but I thought that was you were recommending for a single crystal, but you're saying that is just for a film. So that's
Yeah,
okay.
so
That's
this
fine.
is the film, so which is
Yeah.
for normal radiography. This our plates, radiographic plates are there.
Oh,
But
okay.
for our other PET application alone, this is the single crystals.
Yeah,
which we
yeah,
have.
yeah, yeah.
These are two
Okay.
different things.
Okay, thanks.
Welcome.
If there are no more questions, I take this opportunity to thank you, madam, for your insightful and thought-provoking talk. It indeed helped us all to deepen our knowledge and to think broader. You showed us beautifully the detailed process in which various materials are engineered as per requirement and systematically translated to be used in devices for healthcare applications of medical imaging and radiation detection. Thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedule. We look
Thank
forward
you.
to hearing from you again, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.